Returning to the Character Ethic in an Age of Hustle, a book review of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey from 1989. Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is often marketed as a productivity classic, but it is better read as a moral argument about what effectiveness actually means. Covey's core claim is that many modern solutions to personal and organizational problems are shallow. They offer techniques, scripts, and image management, yet they leave the deeper causes untouched. He contrasts this with a character ethic, tradition, a slower, more demanding approach where durable change begins with inner formation rather than outward performance. What the book is trying to do. Covey is explicit about the problem he thinks modern readers face, a culture tempted by quick fixes. In a well-known passage early in the book, he describes much recent success literature as social band-aids and aspirin that can relieve symptoms temporarily but allow underlying problems to fester and resurface. Against this, he argues that earlier success writing focused on virtues and principles, integrity, humility, justice, patience, the golden rule, because those are what make effectiveness stable over time. He locates his project in that older stream and frames the book as an inside-out approach. Transformation begins with how we see, what we value, and who we are becoming, not merely what we do. Summary of the main ideas. Rather than presenting 7 unrelated tips, Covey builds an integrated sequence. He places the habits on what he calls the maturity continuum, moving from dependence to independence through interdependence. The first 3 habits aim at self-mastery or private victory, while the next 3 move into relationships and collaboration, public victory. This ordering matters. If we try to perform teamwork and communication without the inner foundations of responsibility and integrity, we may gain short-term compliance, but not long-term trust. A second central framework is the P over PC balance, the balance between production, or results, and production capability, the asset that produces results. Covey argues that effectiveness is not simply producing more, it is sustaining the goose that lays the golden eggs. He calls the P over PC balance the very essence of effectiveness, because it forces us to weigh short-term output against long-term health, relationships, and capacity. In Habit 1, Be Proactive, contains one of the book's most cited moral psychological moves, the claim that between stimulus and response there is a space in which we can choose. Covey draws on Viktor Frankl to argue that even in severe constraints, human beings retain the ability to select their response based on values rather than conditions. The practical upshot is a shift from reactive language, I can't or they make me, to responsible agency. Across the chapters, Covey repeatedly returns to paradigms, our internal maps of reality. His point is not merely cognitive, think differently, but ethical. If our paradigm is centered on image, power, or efficiency at all costs, then our behavior will be distorted even when it looks successful. This is why his habits are not offered as hacks, they are offered as a way of life. Finally, Covey frames renewal, that is Habit 7, Sharpen the Saw, as a weekly discipline of sustaining the whole person, physical, mental, social, emotional, and spiritual, so that effectiveness does not become self-destruction. The strengths of the book and why it has lasted. Firstly, moral seriousness is a genre that often avoids it. Moral seriousness in a genre that often avoids it. Covey refuses to reduce effectiveness to output metrics. Instead, he argues that the root problem is often the person doing the work, their paradigms, motives, and character. That is bracing, especially for readers tired of motivational slogans that promise transformation without repentance, discipline, or sacrifice. Secondly, coherent structure rather than scattered advice. The sequencing into private victory and public victory helps readers diagnose where they are stuck. Many self-help books give you tools. Covey offers an architecture for growth. The book's frameworks, maturity continuum, paradigms, P over PC balance, make it easier to translate abstract ideals into self-examination and daily practice. Thirdly, a constructive view of faith and natural law language. Although the book is widely read in secular business contexts, it does not hide its metaphysical convictions. Covey explicitly claims that correct principles are grounded in God as creator, and that some aspects of human nature require more than legislation or education to heal. Readers writing from or sympathetic to a Christian worldview may find this refreshing. It treats moral formation as real, not merely rhetorical. Limitations, and what to read with care. Firstly, the book is heavy on illustration and moral persuasion, and lighter on evidence. Covey's case relies primarily on anecdote, analogy, and philosophical reasoning. That does not make it untrue, but it does mean the reader should treat some claims as normative arguments. This is what humans ought to do, rather than empirically demonstrated findings. Secondly, the principle as universal law tone can overreach. Covey writes as if the same principles will apply similarly across contexts. In practice, organizational power dynamics, trauma histories, and structural constraints can limit what an individual can change, even when they are acting with integrity. The proactive stance is valuable, but it can be misused as a subtle way of blaming individuals for problems that are also systemic. Thirdly, some readers will resist the overtly religious framing. Covey's Christian inflected language of inner renewal will resonate strongly with some and alienate others. Even so, the book's practical disciplines can still be read profitably if one treats its spiritual claims as the author's grounding narrative rather than a required entry ticket. Why this matters for a language and communication audience. For readers of a language-focused blog, the book's relevance is not only time management, it is profoundly about communication and interpretation, how our paradigms shape what we hear, what we assume, and how we speak. Covey's critique of superficial technique applies directly to public discourse. When we prioritize image over integrity, language becomes manipulation. When we prioritize character, language becomes covenant, something that builds trust over time. A particularly helpful application for students, writers, and professionals is Covey's insistence that sustainable output depends on sustainable capacity, P over PC. If your production is essays, reports, meetings, or content creation, your production capability is attention, health, reading depth, and moral clarity. Overinvesting in frantic output eventually degrades the very capacities needed to produce meaningful work. Finally, the verdict. Covey's The 7 Habits endures because it does not merely ask, how can I get more done? It asks, what kind of person must I become for my work and my relationships to be trustworthy? It calls readers away from cosmetic performance towards deep formation, an inside-out life ordered by principle, sustained by renewal, and expressed in mature interdependence. For readers who are busy but unfulfilled, the book's most important gift may be its refusal to flatter. It offers no shortcuts, only a demanding invitation. Choose character over image, capacity over burnout, and principled living over the perpetual chase for the next technique. We will be exploring each of the 7 habits in future episodes. Thanks for watching.